Is a congressional hearing a forum for discovering truth, or is it a stage for political warfare? In a session ostensibly designed to discuss protecting women, one lawmaker decided to reject the premise entirely, turning the proceedings into a viral moment of accusation and defiance. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas took the floor, not with questions for an adversary, but with a script for a willing witness. She transformed her allotted time into a blistering critique of her political opponents, employing sarcasm, data, and a theatrical game called Trump or Trans to make her case. The result was a stunning piece of political theater that cut through the noise of Washington. But was this a brilliant strategic maneuver to expose hypocrisy and legislative misdirection? Or was it merely a partisan performance that sidestepped the issue at hand? The answer reveals a great deal about the state of modern political discourse.
Action so ordered. I now recognize
also,
Mr. Burchett
that the
from
most
Tennessee.
Powerful oversight Republican.
You're not
Congress
recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized.
Talking
I'm
about
sorry, we're going to
fencing
Crockett.
while they're trying to cut Medicaid.
Actually, Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. I now recognize Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much. It is so interesting that I just learned today at 44 years old that the Republicans are going to be the ones to save women. The same Republicans that have been saved for women's reproductive acts, or the same Republicans that have stood for the Equal Rights Act, which would hopefully get women to equal pay, or the same Republicans that just this Congress voted for the SAVE Act, which we know would disenfranchise women from even being able to vote. But let me tell you, they are our saviors, and so I am so happy to be here today, because otherwise I would not have an idea that I had a savior in the Republicans. So let's also talk about the fact that it's only been 100 days, 100 long, terrible days for anybody that absolutely believes in reality, because what we know is that they have terminated staff responsible for enforcing federal protections against sex-based discrimination. Sounds like that's pro-women. Or they've cut funding for domestic violence survivor services. Sounds pro-woman to me. Or they've prohibited funding for research affecting women's health. That definitely sounds pro-women to me. Essentially, they closed the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. Again, sounds like they are fighting for us. And instead of providing oversight over these actions, congressional Republicans have been working to execute one of the most aggressive anti-women legislative agendas in history. And yet, they're here today trying to convince the American people that discriminating against trans people is somehow the only way to protect women. This hearing has nothing to do with improving government efficiency. It's another attempt by Republicans to distract from their demonic and disastrous policies that are making it more difficult for Americans to make ends meet. So, Ms. Goss-Graves, I want to play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. The first one, gutted medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, a.k.a. deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
Encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. This committee could be engaged in actual oversight of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. So let's talk about waste. Like Trump's plan to spend almost $100 million for his little birthday parade, or how he spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. In fact, it's a little bit over 30 million at our last estimation. In fact, President Trump is on pace to spend more than $1 billion of taxpayer dollars just on golfing. Yet the Republicans have been silent. So they must think spending taxpayer dollars on the president's golfing trips is more important than providing health care to their constituents. And when I talk about constituents, we're going to talk about the ones on this committee. So if we look at Texas 26, 39,000 children look to potentially lose their Medicaid with the cuts that they are about to vote on for reconciliation. 88,000 in Georgia 3, 68,000 in Missouri 7, 79,000 in Tennessee 2, 86,000 in South Carolina 4, 50,000 in Texas 04, 85,000 in Texas 27, and in Georgia 14, 111,000. And if you add that up just on this committee, we have 606,000 kids that are relying on us to do right by them. And instead, we playing these crazy games because we worried about 10 trans folk that are in sports right now in college. I wasn't elected to be engaged in these fights. I was elected to make sure that those kids, the kids that they are about to neglect with these terrible votes that they're about to take, I was elected to protect them and to make sure that they could grow up and have all the opportunities. But let's keep on track. Now, when we look at how much they are spending on, let's look at fraud. We could investigate whether the White House and the members of this subcommittee engaged in insider trading and market manipulation. Maybe it's a coincidence that the chairwoman brought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock the day before Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs. But I guess we'll never know. So finally, let's talk about abuse. Like how the Republicans have let Elon steal data of Americans and his competitors to make himself even richer. Look, don't let these hearings distract you from their destruction. This is a rage-bait.
To understand Representative Jasmine Crockett's performance, we must analyze it not as a traditional legislative inquiry, but as a masterclass in modern political communication designed for an audience far beyond the committee room. Her approach was not to dissect an issue, but to dismantle the very premise of the hearing itself. The central thesis of her argument was that the Republican focus on transgender individuals, particularly in sports, was a deliberate and cynical distraction, what she bluntly termed rage baiting, to divert public attention from a broader, more destructive anti-women legislative agenda and the alleged failures and corruption of the Trump administration. The structure of her presentation was methodical and prosecutorial. It began with a foundation of biting sarcasm, framing Republicans as the unlikely saviors of women, while immediately listing policies she claims prove the opposite, such as votes against equal pay and cuts to domestic violence services. This led to the centerpiece of her performance, the Trump or trans game. This device, while logically a form of false dichotomy, was a brilliant rhetorical strategy. It simplified a complex political narrative into a repetitive, memorable, and clip-friendly format. By having the witness, Miss Blasian Gosgraves, attribute a litany of national crises from economic recession to constitutional violations solely to Trump, Crockett effectively painted the hearing's focus on a small number of trans athletes as absurdly disproportionate. She then bolstered this theatricality with hard data, citing the specific number of children in her colleagues' districts who stood to lose Medicaid benefits, thereby grounding her accusations of distraction in tangible human cost. Her strategic goal was clear: to hijack the narrative, reframe her opponents as hypocritical and malicious, and create a viral moment that would energize her base. The tone was relentlessly aggressive and dripping with contempt. Words like demonic and disastrous policies were not chosen for persuasion but for condemnation. Her style was not that of an inquisitive legislator, but of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument to a jury, in this case, the American public watching online. She controlled the entire exchange, not by reacting to a witness, but by directing one. Miss Gosgraves was not an adversary to be cross-examined, but a willing participant in a well-rehearsed piece of political theater. Crockett asked no questions to which she did not already know the answer. Every query was a setup for the witness's simple, one-word affirmation: Trump. This complete control ensured that her message was delivered without interruption or challenge. She successfully prevented any discussion of the hearing's stated topic, instead forcing her own agenda to the forefront. When the witness was not providing the single-word answer, Crockett herself was delivering a monologue, listing grievances about Trump's spending on golf or accusing the committee's own chairwoman of potential insider trading. In conclusion, Crockett's performance was a calculated and powerful execution of political strategy. She demonstrated a profound understanding that in the digital age, a congressional hearing can be a powerful platform for crafting a national narrative. Her argument was not intended to persuade her colleagues in the room, but to arm her supporters with talking points and to frame the public debate on her terms. It was a fusion of legalistic argumentation, theatrical delivery, and data-backed accusations. So, was it brilliant strategy or partisan grandstanding? The analysis reveals it was a brilliant strategy executed through partisan grandstanding. It was an effective, albeit polarizing, use of her platform to cut through the procedural drone of governance and deliver a sharp, unforgettable message directly to the people. What do you think of this strategy? Was it an effective use of congressional time or a symptom of political decay? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis.